Okay, welcome to Into the Channel podcast, primarily about women's football. Before we hit the pitch, if you enjoy the show or love women's football as much as your boys do, come kick it with us already. Subscribe, follow YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to watch or listen. Leave us a review over your favorite podcast app. Links to all of our socials in the show notes of this episode. I am your host, Dino DeCespedes, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel. What is up, man?
I'm feeling fantastic, buddy. And I think for anybody who's watched or listened to this program for any extended amount of time, I pretty much always say I'm feeling fantastic. I just want to be sure to mention that this is in the footballing context. This episode's being recorded on November 4th, a Monday here in the United States of America. I'm not so sure how I'm going to be feeling in the coming days. So just to make it abundantly clear for anybody who listens to this in the not so distant future, and football-wise, feeling fantastic.
If worst comes to worst, let's go out with a bang in this episode.
There you go.
Let me check the number here. Episode number 80? Episode number 80. How about that for your boys? Let's fucking go.
Look at us.
NWSL Playoffs kick off in just a few days here. We just wrapped the regular season. So we're going to give out some awards. We're going to look at the 4 quarterfinals previews. With that said, Mr. Grant Engel, where do you want to get started?
You know I'm a fan of starting in chronological order. The first playoff match, which I know you have thoughts and feels on this playoff match being on Friday.
I do.
It is the first playoff match nonetheless, so let's start with your Orlando Pride taking on the Chicago Red Stars.
Absolutely, yep. Have some thoughts, have some feels. Had to call Nana for some babysitting. This is an 8:00-er. But yeah, this one's going to be on Prime. Cannot wait for this one. This kicks off the weekend. I think the one silver lining for the Orlando Pride is that they get the extra day of rest, essentially.
Sure.
They get to play on a Friday. Assuming that they survive this matchup versus Chicago Red Stars, they'll, enjoy a little bit of rest. And that might be a little bit of a precursor to a potential rest versus rust conversation. I think the first place to start, obviously, historic run for the Pride, 23 straight unbeaten. I mean, I think they've got to be able to hang their hat on being a team that lifted the shield undefeated. And you have to wonder if there was a team really nipping at their heels towards the end, would they have gone all 26 unbeaten? I don't think we'll ever really know. But what was your take on kind of like, I don't know, a little bit of a sputter towards the end of the season?
Yeah, I think it was kind of bound to happen. Orlando Pride GM Haley Carter had some really thoughtful things to say after the undefeated run ended, just like talking about how like the players just needed some rest. They deserved some rest. And I know we talked about the potential invincible season, but to your point, and I think it's a great one, they clinched the shield and they were still undefeated. They raised the shield as an undefeated team. And then you kind of have to switch into playoff mode. I know you and I have described the NWSL playoffs as like another tournament. It's like a cup. Obviously, the Shield winners are the real champions of the league. I think we can safely say that. We stake our flag on that as a show. But
no doubt,
it was a bummer when they lost. A lot of people were saying it at the time. It was a bummer that they went to Portland and lost, but the rest was necessary. So ultimately, it's one of those things you see in sports where I wonder if losing one game loses you 2 games, if that makes any sense, where like you have kind of a loss and it's like, okay, I just let the air out of the balloon and it's going to take me a little bit to kind of reconfigure and get my stuff together. But I don't think any Orlando Pride supporter should be afraid really in any way going into these playoffs.
Yeah, I wouldn't say afraid, but it does feel like it's been a minute since we've seen this team really humming on all cylinders. And I think that's kind of really what we're talking about. But, obviously you look at the 2 losses in their final 3. That's not great, but obviously we understand the circumstances. You zoom out a little bit from there, 10 wins in their last 13.
Pretty good.
Pretty great way to end the season, unbeaten at home all year, 8 wins on the road. That's huge. I think the other sneaky thing, obviously we went on Leanne's show a couple weeks back. I predicted that the Current would win the Cup. Leanne mentioned that they have the final at home. Now, one good thing that broke for the Pride is there's no reseeding. So the Current are in the 4-5 matchup. Orlando's in the 1-8 matchup. So Orlando would not face the scenario of having to go to KC in the final. If they meet, it would be in the semifinal, played on Orlando's turf. So I think that's a great outcome for them. But yeah, I think we're going to see, does it ultimately matter that we haven't seen this team firing on all cylinders? Over the last couple of weeks, it's been a minute, as mentioned. Or is it, the rest point? No major injuries to kind of speak of. Everybody should be fully ready to go. A little bit of an easy matchup, we can say, against Chicago. We'll get to them in a second. But it sounds like well, let me put you on the spot. Apologize. I didn't want to give this. I didn't want to tip my hand on this. I want to make some predictions.
All right.
I want to make some score predictions, who's advancing predictions. So I'll give you some time to kind of think about that. But what do you see potentially from the Chicago team that could make this one a little bit more interesting than people might be expecting?
You have a 1-game sample against Mel Swanson and Allie Schlegel. Both had 7 goals this season. Things can get dicey if Mallory Swanson cuts through your defense and scores a goal in the 17th minute.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, everybody's looking around going, oh boy, is this schneid that we've been on, is this still going? Is this carried into the playoffs, carried onto our home field? That's a live possibility. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think I think your team is going to figure it out. I want to say about Chicago, on July 20th, Sam Staub tore her Achilles in the NWSL Liga MX Cup. Before that, in league play, before the Olympic break, Chicago had 7 wins, 2 draws, 7 losses. In the final 10 matches after the Olympic break, they have 3 wins, 0 draws, 7 losses.
Ouch.
That's obviously not all because of Sam Staub's absence, but it's not a good sign. I don't think they've looked in very good form for quite a while now, and I think it is a really nice matchup for the Pride to kind of get their identity back, stifle a team's attack, and then just run with Benda, Yates, Marta, Angelina, and the whole squad.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of feeling a get-right game,
Yep.
if we want to call it that. I'm not sure if I'm going to go 3-1 Orlando, 4-1 Orlando, but I kind of feel like in case y'all forgot, kind of performance coming from the Pride here. One quick note on Chicago, they've actually been better on the road this season than at home. They've got 20 points on the road versus 12 at home.
Wow.
They'll still be dealing with the Ludmila suspension. She's serving her 3-match suspension for major game misconduct, according to the NWSL. She had been in pretty decent form, 3 goals in 7 matches played. But yeah, as you mentioned, Chicago, not playing their best football at the moment. So where am I going to land? I'm going to go 4-1 Orlando.
Okay. That's a big result. I like it. In single game sample, big matches, I expect these games to mostly be tight. I'll say that Orlando kind of pulls away at the end. Give me 2-0 Orlando. And if we want to do the y'all must have forgot game, shout out to Roy Jones Jr., of course, I think we'll see that from the defensive end specifically.
I like it. Speaking of, I'm going to give out my first award here.
Okay.
Actually, I might give out a couple awards here.
Let's go.
We'll build up to actually, what are we doing?
Oh my goodness. How did this happen?
I'll talk about rust. A little rust
yes.
in the ITC.
Seriously.
Cheers.
Cheers
Great
to you.
season.
Can't believe we went damn near 10 minutes before figuring that out. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah. I was feeling a little parched, and then I put 2 and 2 together. I want to start with Coach of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
My guy, Seb Hines. I'm not sure we can make too much of a credible argument for anyone else for this award. This one is easy peasy for me.
Yeah, 100%. Seb is the guy. He has to be the guy. Unbeaten in the first 23 league matches this season. That's 209 days, 5,025 hours. If I have my from your 1 o'clock match in Louisville to the loss in Portland. The team has a defensive identity while also having one of the best strikers in the world on the squad. There's just something about that dichotomy that I love. I think that comes from a coaching staff. And the team plays for each other, and the squad seems to accept their roles whenever they have to rotate. We've said so much about Seb Hines. I think he has to be the Coach of the Year. But I just want to tell you, in the spirit of let's name some people, I put on here honorable mention, Lorne Donaldson. This Chicago Red Stars team finished last in the table and gave up 50 goals last season. We talked about how crazy that is. 50 goals conceded in 22 matches with Alyssa Nair as your keeper. Wild times out of Chicago Red Stars last year. They've conceded, I think, 12 fewer goals this year. Now, obviously, they got Mel Swanson back. They acquired Sam Staub for a good chunk of the season. They acquired Julia Grosso. But I think Lauren's defensive chops are all over the DNA of this club just in one season. So I just wanted to give him a shout.
Great shout. Yeah, definitely like that one. I'm ready to name my MVP.
Okay.
And I know that there's a certain stone cold killer in Kansas City
Yes.
that is most people's MVP pick.
Yes.
But going through this exercise, jotting down names, when it got to the final, clicking on the keyboard, I could not put Barba Benda as my 2024 NWSL MVP.
I like
And
it.
I think the numbers are a little closer than you would expect. Obviously, Orlando raises the shield, right? So, like, we'll start there.
Sure.
They are the champions, the regular season champions, however you want to think about that. This team's fortunes absolutely changed when Benda joins, opens up everything. Now, defense is fearless. Like, now it's like, okay, we know the strike can come at any moment. She just tilts the entire field. When you look at some of the numbers, though, they're a little bit closer than you would expect. So Benda's fourth in the league in plus minus per 90, plus 1.45 per 90.
Pretty good.
Is basically how much Orlando is outscoring opponents by when she's on the pitch. Like, as mentioned, that's good for fourth in the league. Behind Bia, who only played 16 matches, Ella Stevens, and interestingly enough, Pride teammate Summer Yates.
Yeah.
When you look at, now this is a mouthful, but non-penalty XG plus expected assisted goals per 90. Chewinga's at 0.98, Benda's at 0.95. It's pretty much neck and neck.
Yeah.
So I think you can definitely make a credible case. Counting stats, Chewinga obviously dominant there. I mean, Chewinga's an amazing talent. We'll get to her when we get to KSC. But I think Benda has maybe had more impact on the team, if that makes sense. Like, it sort of feels like, she's created a little bit more gravity that has given Orlando total control of pretty much all of these games. I mean, 23 unbeaten is insane. That definitely doesn't happen without Benda. So when it came down to it, I don't know. I want to be on record.
I love it. I think there is a thing that happens in sports punditry, or maybe just that is bled into general sports conversations, where people love to say, this is the MVP, this is the best player, this is the best team, and it's not close. And I know it's boring to say, but a lot of times I'm just like, it's kind of close. Like, it's usually pretty close, at least. Yeah. Like, usually there's another argument to be made. So I don't think anybody could get too furious with you for making Benda the MVP. I mean, you mentioned like her efficiency, the expected goals, the expected assist, 98 shots, good for second in the league, 44 shots on target, also good for second in the league.
Wow.
She had 18 goal creating actions. That's tied for first in the league. We'll talk about who she's tied for first with later. But she also had 135 progressive passes received, which is top 10 in the league. Like you said, she's an absolute game wrecker. Can't fault you for having her as the MVP.
Yep. One more quick one to give out. My defender of the year, also on this Orlando Pride team. Yeah,
let's go.
Homerism. Who cares? It's our show. We do what we want around here. Give me Emily Sams, third pick in the 2023 NWSL draft. RIP to the draft. You'll always live on in our hearts. The stat that I loved about, I mean, obviously 25 appearances for Sams, absolute beast, as mentioned. Her plus minus for 90 was third in the league amongst defenders, only behind the two Casey Current defenders, Elizabeth Ball and Haley Mace. A little bit of a Chewinga effect there we could talk about.
Maybe.
But I was actually listening to Becky Tweed on Leanne's show, and she was talking about like the primary attribute that you want from your back line and from your center back specifically was stability. And I think when you think about stability, obviously you think probably Naomi Girma first.
Sure.
Kind of rock solid. I think Sams is kind of maybe neck and neck, maybe just a smidge behind along that category. But to me, she has a ferocity that I'm not sure that Girma necessarily also has. So they're kind of different types of defenders.
Yeah.
But again, a historic defense, a historic season.
I love it. I mean, you said it really succinctly on Twitter, and it just makes sense. Best defender on the best defense. Hard to argue against that. Fifth in the league in blocks. You had mentioned her plus minus per 90. Just in general, plus minus, she's first in the league, plus 28 with her on the pitch.
Let's go.
And she's seventh in pass completion and eighth in minutes when you talk about her games played. So absolute monster. She has a massive case and is probably the favorite to be defensive player of the year. I picked somebody else to throw, not purposely to just throw a curveball. After watching some matches and just kind of like going through the Rolodex, I got somebody else who we can discuss later. But I don't think it's homerism. I think you made 3 picks. I'm obviously totally with you on Hines. You made 3 completely defensible picks. And I'm probably the one on Defender of the Year who's got kind of going off the board a little bit.
Let's go to the 4-5 matchup. Casey Current versus the North Carolina Courage. What should we be looking out for in this one?
Okay, so Kansas City is unbeaten in their last 9 matches across all competitions, including the NWSL Liga MX Summer Cup final. Their goal differential in their last 5 matches, 12 goals for, 2 goals against, so a goal differential of 10.
Hmm.
Pretty solid.
Let's go.
Off the top of your head, who's the last team to beat the Kansas City Current?
Couldn't tell you.
It's the North Carolina Courage, my good man, who notched a home
Ooh.
victory in Cary, North Carolina on the strength of a Brianna Pinto goal in stoppage time. That loss was actually during that kind of like weird swoon for Kansas City where they lost that Olympic send-off match at home to your Pride, which I want to bring up later. But then they lost the match coming out of the Olympics to the Washington Spirit and then lost to the Courage. It was 3 losses in a row. But here's the good news. Those are the only 3 losses of Kansas City's season.
Unbelievable.
So the Vlatko revenge tour that we had opined about and wondered if it was possible really kind of started to take shape as the season went on. And now here we are. And, despite your homerism, you picked them on Leanne Sanderson's podcast, The Women's Football Show, which you should subscribe to immediately. You picked them to win the NWSL championship.
It's interesting because they did string together 15 unbeaten right there with Orlando to kind of study. Orlando got to 23. Then they have the 3 losses. And then they string together another 8 unbeaten to close the year. 6 wins, 2 draws. An incredible streak sandwich that they've got going on. So I don't want to say I overlooked that last 8-match unbeaten streak, but I really was thinking more about like the 15 to start the year and like just how unbelievable they looked offensively, just looked like a juggernaut.
Yep.
And I got a little afraid of what that could look like. Once I figured out though the reseeding thing, I think that kind of throws a interesting monkey wrench in it. The big question is going to be if both these heavyweights advance, can Kansas City go to Orlando and get a big win like that? One thing working in their favor, Debinha really coming on. She scored in her most 2 recent matches after going 13 straight scoreless. So that's a huge, boost for them offensively. Over her last 6, she's got 2 goals, 3 assists. So she's really definitely rounding into form.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to start handing out some awards if you don't mind.
Let's go.
So before I hand out an award, I want to mention Sean Nahas as somebody I also considered for Coach of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
Fewer than 500 combined minutes from new signee Courtney Vine out of Australia and the reigning MVP, Guedolin, the Brazilian wonder striker. Still finished 5th in the table. And frankly, just better than I thought they'd be over the course of the season. So I'm going to harken back to all the hacky sports writers who I always liked growing up. And when your team does better than I thought they should have done, it doesn't mean that I don't know anything. It means, man, your coach did a really good job. So I'm going to keep that train rolling. But seriously though, their possessive style, again, I use it with Hines, but like they have a real identity to the way they play. They know who they are. Every time you watch a North Carolina Courage game, they're hard to beat.
Yeah, I think, we did the U.S. Women's National Team show last episode. I kind of wish the national team had a little bit more of this North Carolina Courage playing style. I think it would just give them a new dimension that'd be tough to deal with. But I do also feel like the Current's a really bad matchup for the Courage, because if the game gets away from them even a little bit, an early goal or maybe a second goal before halftime, that's just going to feel like a canyon to try to traverse to get back into the match. So I think really tough matchup for them. If I want to make a prediction, if I had to make a prediction, I think I'm going to go 2-1 Kansas City Current. And I want to give an award out myself, but I'm not sure if we hit at the top of the show, but we also want to call out a couple moments that are going to be memorable from the season, either on the field, off the field, just things that we're going to take away into next season and out into the future. Temwa Chawinga's debut.
Yep.
I went back and watched it. She comes on in the 63rd minute. 1 minute into her NWSL career, she's putting intense pressure on the goalkeeper. I mean, it's a 20-80 ball for Chawinga that she chases down, turns into a 50-50 situation.
Yep.
Doesn't quite get to it. The ball squirts away. Kristen Hamilton's there for the easy putback, basically all created by Chawinga in less than 60 seconds. And then roughly 4-ish minutes later, Chawinga again, dangerous area, lays the ball off to Alex Pfeiffer, basically creates a goal and cashes on an assist to put the Current up 5-1 at that point over Portland. Portland ends up closing the gap 5-4. That ends up being somewhat of a classic. But that Chawinga debut was so illuminating for us because we had just come off the Champions League Tabitha Chewinga carries PSG into the semis, pushes Lyon. It's the whole PSG Lyon, power balance. And I was actually shocked that Tabitha was so low in the Ballon d'Or, right? Well, maybe it's shocked. I shouldn't be shocked, but maybe she deserved to be way, way, way higher in those rankings because she was an absolute menace, total game breaker in Europe. So coming into this opener, I'm like, okay, that's Tabitha's sister. This is gonna be, let's see what she's got. And that lasted about 4 minutes, where I'm like, holy shit, this person is gonna come in and wreck the entire league.
I love it. It was one of my moments, too, that I had listed. That debut pretty much put everybody on notice. And like you pointed out, the first 90 seconds essentially put everybody on notice that this was going to be a player who would have an impact. Now, did we expect the kind of impact she would have? I don't think anybody could have really seen that coming. So I got 2 awards to hand out. This is my one I'm going off the board.
Ooh, let's go.
Defensive Player of the Year, DPOY, if you're into that kind of thing. Ryan Williams, right back for North Carolina Courage. Why, you ask? 55 tackles won, first in the league. 54 interceptions, second in the league. Fourth in the league in dribblers tackled. First in the league in touches with 2,463. She's involved in the game. Fourth in the league in progressive carrying distance. And 7th in the league in crosses into the penalty area. Every time I watch North Carolina, I describe them as just hard to beat. And yeah, they have a lot of losses. They didn't draw a ton of matches this season. But just in that vein, I just kind of thinking about who is making North Carolina so hard to beat. I think it is Ryan Williams and that back line. I also want to shout out Kaylee Kurtz, center back for North Carolina Courage, one of the 7 Iron Women in the league this year. Played 2,340 minutes for Kaylee Kurtz, all 90 of every single match. So shout to her as well, but I'm going to take Ryan Williams as my defender of the year.
I like it. I don't think that one was too far out of the box.
Yeah, probably not.
This is a rock solid defense. I think the play was there. You can see it with the naked eye. The stats back it up.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see defensively, how they're able to, they're going into a little bit of a gauntlet going to KC.
Yeah.
But I sort of feel like if any team could really impose their will defensively, leaning on their discipline, I think for long stretches of this match, this is going to feel like an even game. And then, to your point, it goes into deep waters, single elimination. And like you said, it starts with the defense, with the Courage.
Yeah, 100%. And they're going to need it because now I'm going to make my MVP pick. You referenced it earlier. I'm not going off the board here. Temwa Chewinga scored 20 goals in an NWSL season.
Pretty good.
She added 5 assists. Her XG, 18.1, good for first in the league, 5 ahead of Barbara Benda in XG. But, she obviously, Benda didn't come on till late in the 5th match of the season. 106 shots from Chewinga, that's first in the league. 58 shots on target, that's first in the league. Shots on target percentage is 54.7, that's good for 8th in the league. She had 192 progressive passes received, also good for first in the league. Because why the hell wouldn't you just progressive pass, send the Hail Marys down there and let her run onto them? Like you mentioned earlier, she was a game breaker from the second she stepped on the pitch in the first match and had the Kansas City Current pretty much threatening to win the league until that 3-game swoon that they lost 3 in a row. But it felt like Kansas City was threatening for the league pretty much until that home loss to your Orlando Pride, which I do want to shout what I think one of the moments of the year as well. I can picture Marta just screaming after they win that match. They were down a player because there was a red card for the Pride in that match. That was absolutely one of the flashbulb moments of the season for me. But going back to it, I think Chewinga, I think you got to give her the MVP.
It's funny when you say, this person's got the MVP and, it's not even close. Well, I think one thing we can say is the gulf between second and third, that's not even close because these two players are miles ahead and have been available for the most part all year long and have delivered pretty much week in, week out. Temwa Chewinga, one more stat here, second in the league in shot creating actions with 96 behind the GOAT, Marta. 98 shot creating actions. Let's fucking go. Another Marta moment, obviously, when she sinks the penalty against the Spirit in the clincher to put them up 1-0. Another signature trademark Marta roar for the ages. That's definitely on my moments of the year list for sure.
It's got to be the greatest player who ever lived.
Let's go. All right, let's go ahead. The 2 versus 7. Washington Spirit hosting the team that nobody thought would make the playoffs. Not a single pundit out
God
there.
damn it.
Nobody with a
Didn't have the
microphone.
guts.
Not a single person had this Bay FC team in the playoffs, except for my guy for a couple minutes, and before he, dropped the car into reverse and
Damn it.
scooted back out the other way.
Terrible.
Washington Spirit, Bay FC. But actually, did you make a prediction? Current Courage.
Oh yeah, I think you took 2-1.
Yep.
Current. I want to do the same because I just believe the Courage are capable of keeping matches close.
I like it. Okay, Spirit Bay FC might have a surprise or two for you on this one, but what are you going to be looking for when these two teams lock up?
The Spirit are threatening to win the NWSL Championship. I don't think there's any doubt about that. You already know what time it is with Trinity Rodman, Ashley Hatch, Hal Hirschfeld, Casey Kruger, Gabby Carl, Lacey Santos, Tara Mickione, who also played 2,340 minutes. She made the Iron Woman list.
Let's go.
McKenna Morris has 3 goals and 1 assist in her last 3 appearances. She's coming on very nicely. Ule Sarr was still listed as out with a back injury in the club's final regular season match, but they just have so much firepower that I think everybody has to be concerned with them winning the league. Not to mention they have Jonathan Heraldez as their manager. So it's going to be a real uphill battle for Bay FC, but credit to them because they have figured out a lot of things in the back half of this season.
I think this one's going to be a little closer than expected. But yeah, just to stick with the Spirit side, you mentioned Hidaldes. He was quoted as saying that Sarr has been experiencing some ups and downs on the road to recovery. So we'll see what that means. Rosamund Kouassi, also involved in the Ludmila Tiff, will be serving her second of 2 matches that she'll be suspended for. So that's going to hurt a little bit. Obviously, Sarr, I'm not sure we're expecting her back. Ashley Hatch, who you mentioned, I think has been pretty huge, really stepping in.
Yeah.
1,400 plus minutes played, 5 goals, 2 assists since re-entering the starting lineup 8 matches ago. The Spirit are 6 wins, 2 losses over that stretch. But the Spirit haven't quite delivered against the big dogs. So the 2 losses in that stretch at the Current, they lost 3-0. At the Pride, lost 2-0. You could look at the other side of the coin and say, okay, well, this team won 18 matches, which matched the Orlando Pride.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, I totally agree with you. I think the talent on that Spirit side is there. The coach is also probably an area where they've got an advantage. It'll just be about going out in the field and actually putting it into practice.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to say, that you don't have a coaching advantage versus anybody really with Heraldez and what we know about him and just the way we've kind of seen the team's style of play. I will say you got to give a lot of credit to Albertine Montoya kind of taking an expansion side, having a real rough go of it early. Oshwala wasn't really scoring. Kundanaji wasn't scoring early. They were conceding goals left and right, but they've really kind of started to turn that around. And I'll say, just quick side note, Rachel Kundanaji is playing with confidence right now. She looks absolutely great. She looks like she can do whatever she wants on the pitch right now. And she bagged a brace versus Houston in that final 3-2 win at Houston. I mean, she just looked stress-free out there, just doing whatever she wanted, getting past defenders. But I want to give a shout to Abby Dahlkemper, who we talked about when Bay FC acquired her. So they acquired Dahlkemper on August 26th. At that point, Bay FC was 6 wins, 0 draws, 10 losses. Since then, 5 wins, 1 draw, 3 losses. I don't know if Dahlkemper completely fixed everything about the defense, but she apparently taught them that you're also allowed to at least draw 1 match while you're playing football. To the point about the defense, this squad has only allowed more than 1 goal twice since August 30th. That's a span of 9 matches. By contrast, opponents put up crooked numbers versus Bay FC 10 times in the first 17 matches of the season. So they've really been able to tighten some things up. I'd like to think Montoya probably deserves some of that credit. Obviously, you bring in Dahlkemper, the team just starts to gel a little bit more. But even with an improved defense, it's a tall task to stop Trinity Rodman and Ashley Hatch.
Well, my friend, I'm going to be the guy that predicts that they get it done.
Are you kidding me?
Give me Bay FC 2-1.
Oh my God.
Over the Washington Spirit.
Oh my God.
Let me tell you why.
Please.
I think a tall task, like you mentioned, but all you have to do is rewind back to last year, obviously, different season, different circumstances. The 1 seed and the 2 seed in last year's tournament bounced in the semifinals. We got the 6th seed, Gotham FC, versus the 4th seed, formerly the OL Reign, now currently the Seattle Reign.
Of course.
So I do think anything can happen. And this Bay FC side, you mentioned, 2 wins, 7 losses to start the season. Since then, 9 wins, 7 losses, and a draw. That pace roughly works out to 1.6-ish points per match. That would have been good for 5th place if they were able to play that style of football all year long. And that's no small sample size. That's 17 matches that they're playing 5th place football. They would have been 3 points clear of the Courage, 42 versus 39. I love the Dahlkemper point, had that in my notes for sure. And I just don't think, we spent a lot of time early in the season kind of lamenting the slow start from Rachel Kundanaji. Obviously, Copper Queen, Zambian legend. We were super pumped, couldn't wait to see her. Huge transfer fee. And it took her a minute to get cooking. I just don't feel like she's ready to go home just yet.
Oh my God, I love this. And you know what? I realize you have me a little concerned because I'm picking a lot of chalk in these matches. And, we've watched enough sports to know that's just not how it goes.
Yeah, a lot of betting podcasts out there will tell you that's not how it goes.
Yeah, we should try to find some of those.
All right, give me a pick. Bay FC, Washington Spirit. Who are you taking?
I'm not going to bet against Trinity Rodman, though. just to let you know. I love where your head's at. I will say that will be the final twist of the knife in me abandoning Bay FC when I said, just for anybody who didn't catch it, we were on the great podcast Loud and Proud Orlando, and I had picked early, I was like, I still think Bay FC could do it. And then I was a big old coward and I ran away from it. I'm going to keep on harping on this because I knew I shouldn't have done it. But I just think the Spirit have too many good players. Maybe Lacey Santos comes on and to play the second half or comes on to play the last 30. I just think they'll get it done. Let's make it a barn burner. 3-2, Washington Spirit.
I like it because then I get to actually be up 2-1 at some point.
Yep.
I'm feeling good about my prediction. Then you're going to come over the top and nail your prediction. I love that.
All right.
And I'm glad you mentioned the guys from Loud and Proud Orlando. That brings me to one of my off the pitch moments of the year. How about the production value 2024? Yeah. Amazon, ESPN, Paramount Plus, Ion, NWSL Plus, CBS, ABC, a plethora of options to be able to watch all these NWSL games. And then the pods as well. You mentioned the women's football show, Loud and Proud. Shout out to those guys, Shades of Blue, who we rocked with.
Always.
Busy watching women's soccer. Bridie, you already know. Samantha Lewis, she's got her podcast. Our guy, Peter Weiss, expected own goals, who I've gotten into pretty recently, even though I'm more of a real G guy than an XG guy, but a lot of great insight on that show as well. The production value and just the general raising of the water level around the media, the coverage, the discourse. That's been one of my moments of the year, just seeing the step up 2024.
I love it. Can't forget Vavel and their enhanced women's football coverage with obviously the legend, Lebanon's number 10, Asil Tufaili, heading that coverage as the editor for women's football. Yeah, that's a great call, is that a bunch of people coming together to basically form like Voltron to make sure that we don't have a bunch of crappy, terrible sports shows with two people just screaming at each other, and we can actually talk about the ball and enjoy ourselves while we do it.
Hell yeah. All right, let's get back to screaming at each other.
Of course.
All right, so we made our predictions. One more match on the docket. Gotham FC, the defending cup champs, cup holders.
The defending NWSL champions. I don't want anybody to yell at us. I think you may have referred to it as a cup once or twice. I don't know if people will yell, but you know what? We could be somewhat European football snobs and call this tournament a cup.
No, I can live with that. And the cup holders, it sounds like something that's in my Subaru right now. I've got a couple of those. Gotham FC, Portland Thorns, Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern. This one closes out the weekend. A lot of pedigree on both sides. Player for player might be the most talent on the pitch in any of these quarterfinal matchups when you kind of stack up these rosters against each other.
Yeah.
I think we might see fireworks in this one as well. What are you going to be looking out for?
Ooh, Nelly, look out for those bats. In their last 4 league matches, they have a goal differential of plus 11, 14 goals for, 3 against. They dominated the Utah Royals in their final match of the season. They kind of beat up on your Orlando Pride 3-1 a few weeks ago. Esther's brace in the regular season finale got her to 9 goals on the season. Rose Lavelle had 7 goals. Ella Stevens had 7 goals. Yasmin Ryan had 5. Lynn Williams had 4. How do you want it? They might give you goals from any direction at any time.
It's so interesting because you look at any of the top offensive categories and it's like, okay, you're going to see Chewinga, you're going to see Benda, you're going to see some of the other sort of familiar names, Trinity Rodman, Sophie Smith. And then it just feels like Gotham FC players are sprinkled throughout pretty much every offensive category, whether it's Ella Stevens, like you mentioned, Yasmin Ryan, Esther, she came on late. We talk a lot about championship DNA. Obviously this team is going to come into any match in this tournament with the confidence that they can walk out of there with a win if they play up to their potential. And then you have to consider the Jess Carter effect. Super solid, super disciplined, and they've just played better. They've played more cohesive. Things look a little calmer in the back. And it's hard to kind of detangle, the Jess Carter effect from how Gotham has looked down the stretch here. So I think they might be a team that's kind of peaking at the right time.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think if you're the Portland Thorns, you got to travel to New York to play this match. And things haven't been going super great. In your last 5, your 2 wins, 0 draws, 3 losses, with one of those being that 2-0 victory to end Orlando Pride's streak, though. So you had some good feelings there. I expect this to be a banger with the NWSL Championship holders versus a proud and historic franchise with several great players. I actually think that this one has a broader range of outcomes, though, than I would normally expect with 2 teams with these kind of statistical profiles.
I agree with that.
I think it's on the board, obviously. I think the most likely outcome is a close win, probably for Gotham. But I think a close win for Portland is right out there. But I could just see something weird happening, too, to where either one of these teams could end up winning 3-1. Like, if Sophia Smith gets a brace, maybe like Ina Sujita adds a goal, or like Jessie Fleming has a sick pass and Christine Sinclair like pops one in. Like, I'm not going to be surprised if they find a way to beat the Bats 3-1. This one might, for me, have the most intrigue of the weekend.
I like that. I mean, I'm in total agreement with you with regard to the range of outcomes.
Yeah.
Because we could get a Sophie Smith game.
Right.
We could get Christine Sinclair. Yeah, I mean, like she scored in her final matchup against Angel City, which I was actually shocked how much success Angel City was having, kind of coming back the other way.
Yeah.
So I think Portland is going to be a little shaky. They're going to give up opportunities for sure, but they could be explosive. The midfield is solid, like you mentioned. Jessie Fleming, she's always capable of, connecting something huge. Sophie Smith had a goal wiped off against Angel City that was like pretty ludicrous. This is funny because
looked very much like a goal.
Very much like a goal. But actually, when you were watching, I was watching the telecast, and the angle that they showed on Twitter, which was the proper angle, basically like with proper perspective, was not the one that they were running on VAR on the telecast. Like they were running one from like a corner camera where it was a lot more in doubt. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Portland could make this one really interesting. I wouldn't lose my mind if they won this match, and it would set up maybe a funny outcome where Christine Sinclair had like the big to do for her final home game. But if it ends up being Portland Bay FC, she'll get another home game.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's true. Well, I think I could see that happening. 2 big upsets like that would be pretty wild. But you know what? I'm going to do the thing. I listened back to our NWSL season preview episode, and I picked to win the NWSL championship, those Portland Thorns. And you know what? I've learned my lesson with the Bay FC disaster of me being a huge coward and backing away from them. So, Portland Thorns 2, Gotham FC 1. They find a way to do it. I think if it happens, you got to give me at least 1 Sophie Smith goal, but put me on the board for 2 Sophie Smith goals, and they win the match.
I love that. That's a great pick. That's a great upset pick for sure, because they've got the firepower. It kind of reminds me of the NCAA tournament scenario where one team's got the best player on the pitch, and they're going up against the bigger, higher seeded, more talented team, and it just becomes all right. Let's see what side of the line this one falls on. So I really, really love the pick. I think I'm gonna go. I've got a couple 2-1s on the board already. Give me 1-0 Gotham.
All right, I can see it. Absolutely.
Yeah, like good goalkeeping. Maybe a little bit more of a nervy game. Less chances that you'd imagine, and then Gotham with a professional 1-0 victory to advance out of the quarters here.
I love it. I think it's definitely strong on the range of outcomes. I do want to point out, I think we've passed the match that relates to it. Did you give out your Rookie of the Year yet?
Ooh, I did not.
Neither did I. Do you want to do the honors first, or shall I?
Why don't you make it happen?
I appreciate that. It's Croy Bethune, everybody. She has to be the Rookie of the Year. She appeared in 17 matches. She started 16 of them. She had 10 assists. That's still first in the league. She hasn't appeared in months. third in the league in goals plus assists per 90. Again, she hasn't played for months. She's first in the league still in through balls, and she's first in the league in goal creating actions, which I referenced earlier, with 18. She was one of the most talented players on the pitch every single match she played, and she was a rookie. I think she is the future of Heraldez's system and his winning machine that's going to be there in Washington. In 2 to 3 years, she'll be the best midfielder in the NWSL. I think she'll be in contention in that time for the best American midfielder. And I think that then puts her in contention for one of the best midfielders in the world, which also, by degrees, puts her in contention as possibly one of the best players in the world within 3 years.
I mean, that if you walk back that prediction, I'm going to be very upset. That's a great prediction. I love it.
Give me all the stock.
And then when you look at her coach, Jonathan Heraldez, I don't know, does he have any experience taking a gifted midfielder and, at least being in a support role while while said midfielder ascends to maybe the best player in the world? I don't know. I kind of feel like I've heard that story before.
Yeah, I think he's just the man for the job. And I want to point out, Trinity Rodman, in her Rookie of the Year campaign in 2021, she had 6 goals and 5 assists. Croy Bethune had 5 goals and 10 assists in her Rookie of the Year campaign. They do very different things on the pitch. But, I mean, we're talking about a rare player with a rare level of vision. I'll never walk back this take. We were like 2 months into her career, and I was comparing her style of play to Lionel Messi at that point. I believe in it, man, and I'm not walking it back.
Leo Messi meets Steve Nash, MVP year Steve Nash. I think I like that. The other thing about Bethune, real quick, big moments delivered in big moments, like flipped games, like won games. Mm-hmm. These were high leverage moments that changed outcomes. And as mentioned, the Spirit side able to rack up 18 wins out of 26. Croy Bethune, incredible contribution to that number. So no arguments here whatsoever. I'm glad you got to deliver it. I wanted to deliver the assist, let you smash it home. Announce our Rookie of the Year as a show in the spirit of Croy Bethune. Get well soon. You already know what time it is. I think we covered quite a bit of ground. Anything else you want to hit before we get out of here?
Speaking of her big moments, I think she had 3 goals in stoppage time, 3 winners in stoppage time. I think that's some kind of NWSL record, if I remember correctly. May 1st, the Spirit's 4-2 win over Chicago Red Stars. Croy Bethune had 3 assists. I think she's one of 5 NWSL players in history to do that. Yeah, I can't say enough about her vision and the way she plays. I'm going to do one more quick one because I would be very remiss if I did not mention this. On August 2nd, Kristen Press returned to football, returned to the pitch to play for Angel City FC. Just a great moment for a World Cup hero, a great contributor to just the game in general. Wonderful moment to watch. And I think, Kristen Press and her return to playing football, the perseverance, the toughness that she showed, to see that pay off for her on that August 2nd night, very, very cool to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah, Christine Sinclair, also who we mentioned, caps off a great career. Just a ton of great moments this year. It's kind of got me a little bummed out where they were kind of nearing the end, but we'll be right back here in a couple months. All right, man. I think we did it. This has been another episode of Into the Channel. Sincere thank you for watching, listening, following, liking, subscribing, just plain hanging out with your boys. Actually, quick programming reminder. We'll be back later this week. Champions League preview that might drop over the weekend or early next week. We're going to take another look at match day 3, match day 4. This is where the tournament gets real heated and a ton of fun. And then we will be back next week to recap the NWSL quarterfinals action, preview those semifinal matchups. A ton to get excited about. We hope that you continue to rock with us. Remember to like if you liked and subscribe or follow Into the Channel, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to watch or listen. Leave us a review over your favorite podcast app. Links to all of our socials, the show notes of this episode, and a big thank you to my co-host as well, Mr. Grand Angle, for being Rookie of the Year, Defender of the Year, my MVP. You already know what time it is. ITC, not possible without my guy. I appreciate you, bro.
Likewise, buddy. I mean, I can't possibly have all those awards. I mean, you're definitely coach of the year. I think that goes without saying in the producer role, host role, maybe co-MVPs. I'm not sure how we do this. But either way, let's just start calling ourselves an award-winning podcast. I don't even know what awards podcast can win, but might as well just start calling ourselves that. Who cares?
Coach of the year. There you go. It's right there.
Congrats, coach.